So for step 10, the front uprights, this is where we really start to see the front end take shape. So we need to grab these two pieces, which I've already done, the uprights, and we're going to be putting in these 1510 bearings, which are an interesting size. And of course the front drive cups are going to go through those, and then we've got these O-rings that we need to put in there too, which are just so that we've got a spacer, basically a soft spacer between the dog bone and where it's going to go into the chassis is the same time, as you can see there. So it's actually just going to make it a bit more of a softer feel rather than it be metal on metal. So we've got the ball connectors that we need to put on. We've got to put this all together, and then coming down here, this is where we're going to place the dog bones in and attach everything. And then of course you can see there's two other screws that they want you to use to really attach that plate that we put in the last step. So there's a few things going on with this, and of course here is our hardware, and then those very interesting metal bearings there, our dog bones, and of course our wheel axles there. So I'll set this up and we'll start putting this together. So first off, let's grab one of the uprights, and you can see that we need to place a ball connector right there. Now what I'll do is I'll put that ball connector into the box wrench, which is going to make it easier because it gives me a bit more leverage to be able to turn and get that piece in. So you can see I've got that going in pretty straight. That helps because I can align it better. I've got something to really grab. So we'll just slowly turn this in. And there we go. So there is one of our uprights with the ball connector on it, and you can see that they want you to put in the bearing, and here's that 1510 bearing. It's quite an interesting size. So that has to go in there, and just push it down all the way. You can see it in there. Kind of goes pretty much all the way down there. You can kind of see it on the other end, but it's down there. And now they want you to grab one of those wheel axles and slide it through, and that's more or less what it's going to look like. Now I have said this before, I don't tend to put grease onto these when there's bearings, but because of this design I think this probably should have the grease, so I'm going to use the grease. So there we go, there's some grease on that, and then I'll grab that end and we'll grab our upright and we'll just pop it in just like that. So that is what it's going to look like, and you can feel that everything in there is nice and smooth. So then you can see that there's going to be the O-ring, and the easiest thing to do to put this in is put the O-ring in, but then use a dog bone to actually get it into place down at the bottom. And there you go. So you can see it down there, and it's exactly where it needs to go. But you can see that once that dog bone's in there, see how there's not the, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's got a softer place for it to sit. And it helps with it just not being completely metal on metal. It gives it a little bit of cushioning, but that feels quite good. So that one is done for now. So let's grab our other upright, and of course you can see this one was that way, this one is that way. So we're going to use our box wrench once again, put the ball connector in there, and we're going to start pushing, give it a bit of pressure, line it up a bit just to make sure that it's going in correctly. Yep. And start screwing it in. So there you go. So there is our other ball connector attached to that. So now, again, we're going to put our bearing in there. Squeeze it all the way down. It's in there. And then, of course, we've got our axle, which is going to go down in there. But first, I'm just going to give it a little bit of grease as we did on the other one. So same idea. And again, I realize everybody has different opinions on this of what you should do, but I do find I'm going against sort of my own rules with this one, because with this being the axle, and you've got the bearing and everything's moving, I am greasing this more. It seems, and of course, what you'll see here is I'm down to the very little bit of what came with the kit for the grease. So I have this other one, and I will leave a link down below to this. So again, if you decided to get it, I would help the channel a little bit, and it'll be a small amount, but it is an affiliate link. But this stuff is great, and because it's a much bigger tube, there's plenty of it, and I've used it obviously for a lot of kits. But that will end up replacing what we've got here, because we're really running low. So I'm probably going to have to switch quite quickly to that now. Anyways, we're going to pop that in there as we did before, and then we've got our O-ring, which we're going to pop into there, and we're going to use the axle to pop it down to the bottom. And there we go. So we've got our O-ring in place. So now we have both of the uprights with our drive axles in place. So that step is complete. So now we're going to move on to installing those and the axles into the car. So now if we bring the chassis into play here, I started putting some grease onto this with the little tube, but I've pretty much run out. So I'm going to come over here to the bigger tube that I have, and we'll start using that now. So we've got to grease up this, turn it around. We're going to grease this up too. It's a lot easier using these bigger tubes, I gotta tell you, because you've got, and of course this has that little pointer on it, so it makes it kind of easier to pinpoint where you want to put the grease. But anyway, there is our drive axle. So now that this is all greased up, when we grab the chassis, we need to get it through here to go into the drive cup on the other side. So we've got to slide that through and get it in that way, so that it's actually sitting in the middle. Okay, so then when we grab this one, yes, this is the one that it was, we need to be able to slide that in, make sure it goes into the drive cup. There we go. So now it's in there, and we're going to use one of these screws here to screw that down and in place. And I'm just going to see if I can get it to, yes. So it's in, but I haven't tightened it. I just want to be able to do that so I can show you that that is how it's supposed to look. And there's a screw from the top and a screw from the bottom. And you can see that the drive shaft is right through the center of that upright. So now we can grab our screwdriver, and I'm going to hold this up a bit with my hand as well because I don't want to put too much pressure on this. I'm just going to screw this in a bit for now, and then I'm going to grab the other one. And same thing, we got to screw that in from the top. There it is. And now we're going to screw that in. And I'm just going to screw that one in again too, just to make sure that's correct. Which it is. So there we go. There is one of our front drive axles completely installed. So now we just have to do the same thing with the other side. So with the other side, same thing. We need to grease up these dog bones. Metal on metal. And do the same on this one. There we go. And then if you see this, we're going to slide that through. Into the drive cup. So that looks like that. And then we're going to take our other upright. And same thing. We need to get that dog bone into there. So I'll try and match the look of that. Slide that in. Yes. There we go. And then of course we've got our step screw that's got to go onto the top and in. So same thing, let me screw this in a little bit just so I can see how that's fitting. Yes, it's fine. So now I'll turn this around and we're going to do the same thing from the top. Go from bottom again, make sure that's correct. Yep. So there we have it. There is the other side. So now both drive shafts are in, everything's set, so that we've only got one more thing to do on this side, which is to put in those two final screws on the top, which you can see here are going to go into these two spots here. So we'll put the one in there. And I'm going to hold this up because again, I don't want to put pressure on the body mounts because they're just too light. You could end up snapping them and I don't want to do that. So I'll hold it this way for now, get this thing started. Yep, that's fine. So now I'm going to turn this over and screw this right in. And the same on the other side. And there we go. So that is now completely attached. We've got our drive axles completely attached on both sides. So we are all set. That step is now complete. So our front end is finished. So now we're going to start working on the rear end. And the first thing we need to do is work on the rear differential.